having certainty in your head, which I think is a major differentiator versus saying, hey, just work hard. Yep. But you never know if it's ever going to pay off. You never do. It's betting on yourself. And that, to me, is the hardest part, is you don't have that compass. You don't know for sure what's going to happen. You know, if you can get through that, all of a sudden things become much clearer and the certainty's there.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of the Pay It Forward podcast. I am one of your hosts, Austin Seward, and we have
Keegan Walls.
And we are super excited today to have our guest, Jon Holthaus. Jon is the co-founder of Holthaus Financial. He is also the co-founder of Country Boom, which he is most well known for. 3-time award-winning La Crosse County Financial Advisor of the Year. A wealth of knowledge, a wealth of wisdom, and really excited to have him here. So welcome, Jon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I don't know if that's a wealth of knowledge or anything, but you know, we'll see what we got. So
awesome. Well, to start off, why don't you give our listeners just an idea of your entrepreneurial journey? Where did you come from? Where did you start? How did you get into business? What you've done along the way, and where you are now?
Yeah, I'm from Fenimore, Wisconsin.
I can take this hat off now, by the way.
That's all good. I think it looks great on
That
you,
was just for the
That was
intro.
actually
After his intro. I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Is this going to? I think he forgot about it.
I think it looks great, to be honest. No, I'm from Fenimore, Wisconsin, small town down by like Prairie du Chien, Platteville area. And you know, my parents have always been, for the most part, self-employed. My mom was a tax business. My dad did sales for a long time for a dairy equipment company, and then my parents had some rental properties and stuff like that. So had a farm, did some different things in the ag business as well, you know, just farming, kind of growing up in that work environment. So that's kind of where that spark kind of came from, was just the fact of, you know, my parents, if they really wanted to, they didn't really miss anything. You know, they never really had a lot of money, or never really set in that sense. But the one thing that was always cool was that, you know, they were always able to make the big things, whether it's, you know, if I was in band or choir or, you know, any sporting events, you know, they always found a way. So in that early sense, it was always just kind of something where that flexibility of time and creating something was always like really motivating for me, I guess, in a sense that, you know, how do I never have to like work for somebody per se? So that's kind of where it kind of started. And then coming to La Crosse, if people are from here, like they don't get like how cool this area is, not just from the backdrop, you know, but like the history and how it just continually, for a small town, and, you know, comparatively to me, it's a big city, right? The town of 2,000. But I mean, like the Cargill company was started here, right? Like Quick Trip, you know, La Crosse footwear. I mean, you get logistics, health, you get into some crazy amount of like unbelievable industry, you know, Reinhardt Foods, you know, it's just industry, just, it's kind of just like set a standard where it just and people try to replicate it, you know, but there's something about the area that has such deep history. And this you know, this region of just like finding a way of helping each other, you know, succeed, and embracing young entrepreneurial people and supporting them in a way is just, it's just crazy to get here in campus. And, you know, I think it started more, you know, not as, I don't know how to put it, but we went to the La Crosse, and that's how I kind of arrived here. And I noticed on campus, there was nothing like entrepreneurial based as far as a club goes. It was finance clubs, marketing clubs, and that type of thing. And I'm kind of like, oh, maybe you know, this whole entrepreneurial thing was a buzzword at that time, because in 2007, Mark Zuckerberg started Facebook, and that was like crazy. It's just infatuating to me, where it's like,
yeah,
how do all these other businesses, all these other companies with massive resources, and all of a sudden, just like out of nowhere, it created something that nobody could replicate. They've tried over and over and over and over. They couldn't replicate it. You know, raising capital and all these crazy buzzwords, you know, is just like almost like a foreign word to a lot of people, especially at that time. So it was just a matter of going to the Small Business Development Center, which is on campus. Met Ann Lavaca, if you know her, and she goes, "This is great." Well, there was 10 other meetings I had prior to this. They're like, "No, man, like just we've had plenty of people try to start, you know, clubs, and they just fail, right? They just don't put the effort in." And I'm just kind of like, well, that's not me. I don't know what you're talking about, man. We're gonna make this cool, you know. So it was just one of those things that kind of sparked that, and a lot of relationships came off of that, and here we are. So
So that it was an entrepreneurship club or entrepreneurial club, or
Yeah.
what was the club that you started?
Yeah, it was actually it's part of like a national affiliation at that time, which is almost like a franchise thing. It was Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization, which
I think I heard of that.
yeah. So that's
Yeah.
I started that in the local chapter, so
Yeah.
to speak. And
CEO.
CEO, yeah,
Yep.
it's CEO,
Yeah.
Collegiate
Yep.
Entrepreneurs Organization. So we started that, and I think our first speaker was Dave Ring, and then Brian Johnson was after that. It was just at first it was just bringing in speakers, right? Like
Yeah.
you hear these people, what's their story? Like how the heck do you start? It can be intimidating, right? But everybody starts that first step, and that was just a consistent conversation. Was just kind of how they started and
Yeah.
where they went from there. So
That's kind of the hopes of this podcast too.
Right.
I know we have a lot of young entrepreneurs that listen to this, and the clubs like that are great, and you bring those people, but there's 15, 20, 30 people in the room.
right,
I mean, with a podcast, you can share that everywhere. And we recently had our first clip just go viral and over 2 million views on Instagram, almost 500,000 views on TikTok. And now you get a story of somebody that you'd bring into a group like that and speak and inspire youth and be able to blast it out to the world.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's been awesome. We appreciate you having here. I align with kind of the hard work mentality of I didn't grow up on a farm,
right,
but I did do a lot of farm work when I was a kid.
Right.
Landscaping, worked for a farmer, driving a tractor when I was 12 years old, baling hay, stacking hay, and all the way into the rafters of the barn at
Right.
12 years old, 6 in the morning. I mean, my work ethic was definitely founded on the farm as well.
sure,
And a lot of the entrepreneurs that I know, it seems to have a similar mindset around that. People that grew up farming, that they just have a good work ethic. They don't know any different. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Then if you relate that farming, sometimes it's a lot of work for not a lot of reward.
right,
Depending what you're doing, but in business, if you take that work ethic and apply it to the right things, the sky's the limit.
yeah.
So,
What's if you look at like the documentary, like Michael Jordan and stuff, is that practices were so intense. By the time they got to a game setting, it was just like, oh,
Yep.
It's pretty easy from there. So it's kind of the same thing. It doesn't matter if it's farming, if it's anything else. If you've been through hard work, real hard work with not a lot of reward, and all of a sudden it's kind of like you get to something where someone's like, hey, it's a very challenging career. Make sure you prepare yourself, and all of a sudden you get there like, this is it,
for sure.
right? Like, the hardest, like in real estate, the hardest thing I have to deal with, where people fail is because they don't like being told no, or the
Yep.
fear of rejection and stuff. It's like,
Yep.
that's it. Some people are like, oh God, it's just, it just scares them. Where else I was like, all right, that's not a big deal. Like, it's better than being a redhead in 100-degree heat
For sure.
in July.
Yeah.
Anything's better than that. So
I remember, after college, I looked into financial advising for a
Yeah.
little bit, and went through a very scrutinized process to get an interview and everything like that. And it's just because the turnover is so high. And
yeah,
but then, it's very similar to at least selling in real estate, and it's really not that hard if you put in the work.
yeah,
And it's just the more I've worked with salespeople, young salespeople, there's just not a lot of people that are cut out for it.
right,
Not a lot of people that are willing to put in the work. And I think people that have that work ethic at a young age and that self-motivation are the ones that succeed.
For sure.
So in regards to financial advising, is that something you got into right after college then?
I was in college.
Okay.
I just, I kind of always knew I kind of wanted to do that. Being my mother did taxes, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to like prepare the taxes, but
Yeah.
I know enough to be dangerous to talk about taxes and whatnot. So my dad was disabled. He was paralyzed from neck down for about a year and a half. It's called Guillain-Barré. It's like a temporary paralysis thing. So we never really had any benefits or anything else like that. We went through the whole wheelchair phase and all the different type of stuff. It's emotionally, mentally, and financially taxing on the family. But lo and behold, he happened to attend a seminar, and he bought disability insurance. So that really saved our family in a sense that a lot of pieces that they had out there, didn't come crashing down just because of something simple like that, right? So it's always kind of intrigued me from that sense, where I've always wanted to talk investments. That's kind of like what's your risk hedging. And so I just started as an internship in college, and cut my teeth that way, and graduated and went from there. So it's always been just a lot of it's anything I really do is a lot of it's from like some kind of personal emotional ties. I don't know what it is, but I take things way too personally, which I'm told, right? But I also take things very personally and anything on the good side as well. So most of the things that I've become involved in or have some passion is usually driven from some kind of deep personal ties, you know. So, yeah.
Which I mean, that makes sense. I mean, like you guys were talking about, certain people are like, oh man, this is challenging, and the English language is just so small that
Right.
challenging is so different to everybody else. but the main, I think the driving force behind anybody is know your why. We've talked about it a lot on the podcast. If I know my why and I can attach some heart and whatever behind it, it's those reasons of why I'm doing something that I think are a huge motivating factor, and probably the main motivating factor behind why people work hard at something. Right? Because if people are like, oh, I just saw a podcast and you were a farmer. He's like, man, all these people are like, man, oh, I see farming on Instagram. I want to be a farmer. And he's like, you don't want to be a farmer.
No.
You don't get it.
No.
So, oh, I want to be a real estate agent because I think, oh, all this freedom and flexibility. HGTV. I get to go look at cool houses and it's easy and everybody reaches out. No, but they don't want to actually work hard. And so with anything, it's why are you getting into what you're doing? If you just think it's going to be an easy path, it's not going to be it. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think direction too in your own mind of just creating like certainty that something's going to do well, right? Like people say, work hard. Like what does that actually mean, you know? Yeah. So I think if you told somebody, listen, if you would drag yourself through a mile of glass and I guarantee you at the end of this, you know, mile of getting beat up, there's $1 million guaranteed for you. I think mostly everybody would do it, right? They're willing to, you know, but what if they said, hey, drag yourself through this, and it might be for 5 years, and there's no guarantee at the end of it. Mm-hmm. We'll see what happens. And they'd be like, what? So you might be halfway through this journey where you're like, this might not even be there, right? Yeah. You start questioning it, right? So it's those mental gymnastics, not only for yourself, your spouse, your family, people, what are you doing? Like, everybody wants to get into real estate. Everybody wants to be a financial advisor. You know, it's a 95% failure rate. You know, like it might not ever, you know, there's certain times you think you're like, I might not make this. I just don't know if I'm cut out for this. You know, you're questioning and have your bad days, you know, but it's just a matter of just like keep showing up, right? So it's having certainty in your head, which I think is a major differentiator versus saying, hey, just work hard. Yep. But you never know if it's ever going to pay off. You never do. It's betting on yourself. And that, to me, is the hardest part, is you don't have that compass. You don't know for sure what's going to happen, you know. If you can get through that, all of a sudden things become much clearer and the certainty's there.
Yep. And I think your passion has to be much deeper than money.
For sure. Absolutely.
You can't, if your passion or your why to get into financial advising is because you know the reward, the financial reward, or same thing with selling real estate or whatever, like that will just drain you over time because there is always more. For somebody who's accumulated some sort of wealth in a short period of time, there's always more. Like when 4 years ago, I dreamed of being where I was now. Now I dream of being at a different level.
For sure.
And it never ends. Your well will always run dry and you'll just keep chasing. So I think whatever it is, maybe it's financial freedom for your family. Maybe you didn't have that as a kid and this job would provide that financial and time freedom for your family to be able to go and do things and have more experiences. And I think that's one thing, but to just accumulate cash or to tell people you make a big income,
it's weird how they go hand in hand because, you know, early on, you know, it was always like, hey, hit this mark or anything else. As soon as it became literally just, the more I'd say you don't need me to people, the more doors opened up. Yep. Because everybody thinks every single time you meet with a financial advisor, what are they going to do? They're going to recommend something. Oh, you're doing something wrong. This is why you need me. And this guy is a, you know, or girl is a total sham, or you know, yep. I got more of a either name recognition or introductions because maybe half the people I'd meet with, half wouldn't need what I would do, half wouldn't. Mm-hmm. And the fact they'd say like, what you're doing is perfect. You're great. Sounds like your person you're working with is doing a good job, what they tell me. And the more I stop putting pressure on myself that there's always going to be some angle or anything else of like winning that business or something. And all of a sudden like, wait, you don't think, I'm like, you don't need this, man. Like you're good. Like you're set. Like everything you're doing is perfect. You know what? Actually, I got a friend of mine, you know, and all of a sudden it was like, they're just like shocked, right? So it's like, you know, same thing in real estate where it's someone's like, hey, I'm going to try to convince this person to buy this house versus doing your research, finding the right house and saying like, this house isn't for you. And here's why. right? Maybe it's over here, or maybe you should sit and wait out the market or something. I mean, people don't even know how to react to that. And now you're more of a consultant and trusted consultant versus just everybody else. Just, oh, that's why you need to start this. Why you need to do this. I've told more entrepreneurs, like, you don't need me.
Yep.
Why? Well, if you can take your money and double it in a real estate transaction in a certain market.
Yep.
I mean, what's a a 12% or 15% return might be great.
Yep.
But what you're doing is financially is more, okay, well, I want to just offload stuff because I want to do, okay, well, then that's a conversation to have.
Exactly.
But all of a sudden they're like, you're a financial guy, not trying to like sell me something. Like, but even in that, more financial, rewards start coming your way where I'm not prospecting as much, so to speak, which can take a lot of time, as you know.
Yep.
Or something just referral based, phone calls and stuff like that, because it's not just this person's different, right? So,
which speaks to anybody who in sales. Your passion better be people and actual like care, because the number one thing you can do is build trust.
Right.
Too many people are chasing the carrot, which
sure.
is quick financial success, as opposed to, listen, if you're going to join anything in sales, it is a long game. Play the long game of sincerely caring about people. These people might not buy right now, but what I am doing is I'm actually doing what's in their best interest. I'm building trust, and then that builds a foundation. Like, you're in it for financial freedom. Well, then build a foundation to where you don't have to be grinding all the time, so that you can actually have some financial freedom and some time freedom. But yeah, too many people are, I think, chasing the money, which is just shallow. You get there, it's like, okay, I want 100K. Then you get 100K and you find out, oh, now I want, it's such a shallow reason. And it's about people.
That's what kind of spurred on to, some of the either successes or perceived, successes of, I would say, Country Boom. I mean, there's a lot of relationships that I have just from my financial advising world that are never actual clients. They're just people I had met with, had some mutual respect, helped them with something. There was no charge to it or anything else like that. And suddenly like, hey, how can I help? Hey, I have this. Oh, I know somebody. And it just kind of snowballed. And that's, really what saved our butt in the early years for sure.
Let's talk more about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk Country Boom.
Yeah.
Tell us where the heck did that idea come from? How did it start? And for people, I mean, we have a lot of people that aren't local, so they might have no idea what Country Boom is.
Yeah, it's a 3-day music festival, We just picked the country theme because that would seem to be the trending in the, more popular, I guess, trajectory, so to speak. Where it kind of started, like, again, early days, I remember I was in an apartment, my girlfriend at the time, which is not my wife, I remember I just was driving down the road and we would go to music festivals in the summertime. We didn't really have any money. We wanted to do something that was kind of a vacation, something to do in the summer. And it was just something that we had in common. She was from the east side of the state. At that time, it was Country USA, which is no longer around. I used to go to, like, say, Country Fest and that type of thing. So that was our summer thing of, dating, that we would go and have fun together, right? It was just, whether it's camping out, going to concert, these things are amazing because it's 3 days or 4 days and it's just, 5 concerts in a day, 6 concerts in a day versus like, hey, you go for one concert, right? And it's just kind of like, holy cow, like you feel like when most concerts you just start to get into something, it's like, okay, I'm starting to feel it, and all of a sudden like, okay, it's over. See you later, right? And it's just kind of like, I just started getting the groove, right? So it starts early in the day. By the time you're kind of like, oh man, I got my fix, man. I got my fill. By the time it's all said and done, it was kind of like, it's just, it's great, So we started just doing that, and she'll tell you, probably when we both like kind of truly fell in love. I mean, we were 4 years into a relationship, 21st birthday, and it's special now. But at the time, it was so insignificant. My 21st birthday, we go out to eat at Ciati's, right? And then I'm like, oh, I'm going to order a beer legitimately, right? And so we're like, oh, God, So we go out to eat. And then she's like, all right, we had Jason Aldean at the Lacrosse Center. So I was like, all right, cool. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, do you want to get some drinks before we go down? She goes, yeah. She's 20 at the time. So I remember we go to, me just being naive, I go to like Quick Trip or Festival and get a bottle of Jose Cuervo tequila, which was,
boy.
I'm like, what am I thinking? We get to her apartment, just to take a couple of drinks or whatever, and we're like running late. Oh, we didn't have like any like chaser, right? So I was like, I'm like, oh gosh. So we're like trying to drink, we're like, oh God, So we get to the Lacrosse Center, and she bought tickets for us. We were in the nosebleed, it was way up there, and I'm like, you know what? And again, this on paper would sound like immoral, but also at the time your kid, like, I'm gonna try to find a way to get on the floor, make it a special experience, right? Find a way to get down on the floor, which I'm, I try to push against that country, but also like if they're young kids, like they're trying to get in VIP, like I was that guy at one time, right? I'm not gonna cut the wristband. Security's like, hey, we did this. I'm like, don't do that. I mean, they're just kids, man. Like,
it's concert life.
It's a concert life, right? So we get down on the floor, and all of a sudden, security starts clearing out these aisles where they had seats and stuff. Well, this older couple that was there would see us and like, oh, you guys are a cute couple, and they'd switch seats with us because they had their wristband on where they're supposed to be, and they let us sit in their seats.
Really?
So it was one of those things where we're up front and up close, and it was special, right? It was just something we weren't supposed to do. We were up close, and we fell in love at a concert, like a country concert, right? So it was always just a passion for myself, and people always in the area left to go to other towns to do this, right? And it was always like this lacrosse pride where it's like, businesses start here. It's philanthropic. They want the best sports, the best schools. It was always, things were always growing, and they wanted to do it the highest standard. I'm like, why doesn't lacrosse do something like this and do it better than anybody else, right? So it was just kind of like, well, maybe I should start it then. Just how crazy. I was 26 at the time. Like, dude, you can barely afford rent at this point, right? Or just starting to get ahead, and we go down this journey. So myself, Dave Ring, we started going down that journey, and it was really well received by a lot of people when we were talking about it. But we kept it pretty hush-hush for a long time, and it just started snowball. We weren't ready for it, and it just kind of, it just started taking off. And we spent more time as that snowball grew of just like trying to catch up to this snowball, so to speak, more so than pushing it. So it just kind of took on a life of its own at one point.
How many years?
Fifth
year?
Yep.
Awesome. And it was just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I went for the first time.
Did
Thanks to you? So enjoy.
Yeah.
I mean, awesome. Like, just the environment, the fun. I mean, the setup, everything. I mean, it was sweet.
Yeah.
So, which I'm not the biggest country fan in the world. Not
probably the smallest.
I'm not a country fan. So we're just gonna put that out there.
Yeah.
But even me and my wife went on a date, and we were even like, I want to go back next year.
Right.
Because to anybody listening, you're not a country fan. It was still an awesome time, awesome environment, experience. It's more than just the music. And anytime I think if live music is just better anyways, right?
For sure.
So I'm not a huge country fan. I'm not going to listen to it on the radio. But live music, it's like the show and the performances were awesome.
Yeah.
It's fun for anybody to go to. So.
For sure. Yeah. I compare it to Oktoberfest, do people listen to polka music on the radio? No, they don't. But if they love
Boston
Oktoberfest.
We did have 2 polka songs at the wedding.
Back to back.
It was back to back.
Fastest way to clear a dance floor.
Hey, maybe that's what he wanted.
We just had to get them over with in the beginning.
Yeah,
great.
Yeah.
But I compare it to that, like people don't go to the Oktoberfest parade based on what floats there are.
For sure.
They don't go to the grounds because of what band is playing the polka. They go there for just the camaraderie, the sense of community, and some of the things like that. And just, that's what I think that we tried to do is, whether it's country, whether it's not country artists, I don't know. I love Quick Trip, not because of what most people would consider for like Quick Trip. I consider it almost like Disney where, I would say if you show, an extreme amount of effort or focus on things where it's completely least expected, that to me is where like you really separate yourself, and a lot of the stuff on paper looks dumb, if you think of like say Quick Trip, for example, there's always convenience stores. There's the Chevrons of the world and these massive companies, their big thing is what most people say, hey, what do you love about Quick Trip? And I'm like, oh, the bathrooms, right? Well, at that time, on paper, the business model was save the most amount of money that you can on bathrooms. Have an outhouse. You don't want people stopping. You'd have to clean these bathrooms all the time, so the expectation was literally zero, right? And so placing even any kind of effort on that suddenly is like a holy cow, right?
Yeah.
Really nice hotels. Suddenly you're like, oh, this is a fancy hotel. They put a chocolate on my pillow, right?
Right.
10 cents. Or they folded a towel into a swan, right?
I dig those.
Yeah, those are sweet. But it's also like, holy cow, they put, our honeymoon, they put like roses or sprinkled whatever petals on, the floor. It's like, oh my gosh. It's just,
It's the little things.
it's the little things like that where instead of saying, we can get away with this because that's what the industry says, or if you flip it on its head and say, this is why people wouldn't go to even an event, music festival, right? We never went to these things that, really any concerts and stuff as a kid because it was just a pain in the butt getting to and from the event, right? Traffic in, traffic out, right?
Yep.
You hate porta potties, right? There's nothing really good to eat. It's dusty. It's dirty. There's lines for drinks. There's all these things like, well, you can save a little bit of money by not having quite as many people, right? Not quite as many, porta potties or just, so that we're placing that extra effort where it's like we're doing RFID technology, so there are no waits for cash or anything else like that. It's just click and go, click and go. Same thing with shuttles to and from. We have free shuttles. I hate getting nickel and dimes when I go to events. So it's like free shuttles get to and from. You can get out of there within 45 minutes, right? So there's a lot of these little things where you get to the point where even there's no porta potties anymore. It's all air conditioned, indoor, bathrooms of some stretch that all of a sudden it's like all the things that you would hate about other events. Then, like to your point, maybe you don't even care who's on the stage. Still bringing high level talent, but just hyper focus on where it's least expected, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people don't say, hey, they gave me a great value on my home and this real estate transaction. But if you say like, man, they answered their phone at whatever, it wasn't even expected to, right? Yeah. Or they went above and beyond in this, that's what people remember is where they say, well, it's a real estate agent, you got to expect that versus saying they did this and people are like, holy cow, that's going to spread like, the bathrooms at Quick Trip.
Yep.
Yeah.
I go to Charmont, beautiful bathrooms. No one ever talks about it because it's a nice place and they expect it to be really nice, right?
Yep.
You have a Charmont burger, it's unbelievable, right? But they expect it.
Yep.
People say, oh, I love Quick Trip hotspot, I mean, it's good, but is it compared to like a filet mignon? Not really, it's for a convenience store.
Yep.
Right? So I say double down on the things that are like have no expectation, and I don't care what industry it is, and it's going to go like stratospheric. So
I think especially in industries that are more saturated, like real estate, like financial advising, like a bunch of festivals, right? There's in industries where there's a lot of competition. Sometimes it's not a 180 change in a business model that's going to make you successful. It's literally the little things.
For sure.
And I mean, we had Dave Scogan on here from Festival and talks about the 10 tile rule and just greeting customers.
Right.
Like as simple as greeting customers and the impact that has on going to a grocery store.
Yeah.
And not just walking by somebody or somebody, the boy stocking shelves is getting in your way and like little stuff like that. So that's really, really good. So air conditioned, did you guys have air conditioned?
We do for the VIP,
year?
Cool. We do for the VIP, but it's just a step in the right direction of eventually having for everybody to have that kind of experience.
Cool. That's awesome.
For myself, might be important, sure.
Right.
But I know my wife would be like, we're going to go to this event because of that, right? So,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think it's those little things. It's kind of like you see people on Shark Tank. It is like the silliest, dumbest little ideas are the big success. I think okay, I'm going to be this new agent, so I got to do this huge new marketing, and then I'll be the one. No, it's the stuff that everybody's dropping.
Right.
Like the squatty potty. Are you serious?
Right.
It's a stool for. You're like, duh.
Yeah.
ShamWow or
Right.
Scrub daddy.
It's like,
Smiley faced sponge.
or like the makeup spatula. I'm like, it's a spatula for makeup. But you're like, nobody thought of that, really?
Yeah.
And so, nobody thought about having nice bathrooms.
Right.
Duh.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, for any entrepreneur, like the tiniest little easy things are the ones that make people think I'm thought of, they thought of me, I'm cared for. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
That's cool, man.
So obviously it's not cheap to put on an event like this. How do you, for somebody who this was an idea in your head, you could barely make rent.
Yeah.
How the heck do you go about either raising capital or finding partners or funding? Because I imagine you don't get paid until the event, right? So you have to front everything until people actually swipe their credit card and pay for their ticket.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that was the early stages. It was, we solicited some capital and those type of things. And we got in the room with some very big deals type of thing. Mm-hmm. And it was just, I don't know. I if there's one skill set that I think that I have that's not taught is I feel like I'm pretty easy to like read people as far as like, not personality wise, but like their soul almost. It's weird. I don't know why, but it's, there's certain instances where, people say the right things and I'm kind of just like, couldn't quite get to the same, something because something wasn't quite right. So, in that sense, there was just some, COVID especially was a big one where just all of a sudden you kind of figure out, who's in your corner and who's not, so early on there was very little, if any, capital at all other than personal, myself and Dave Ring. And it's kind of like, you got to pay your artists and stuff like up front. And then, you go on sale with ticket sales and that type of thing. So going back on it, it's like that was extremely irresponsible, but, we did a good enough job that, a lot of the ticket sales and you had sponsors that want to support it locally and those type of things. And that's kind of how it started, right? First year, lost a lot of money, right? But there's some people who came knocking at your door like immediately saying, I need to get paid, need to get paid, need to get paid. And other businesses or other vendors in town are just saying like, hey, how'd this year go? It's like, it sucked. It's like, all right, well, when you get around to it, just let us know. And, they didn't charge me interest. They didn't whatever. Either they donated their service or they just say, hey, we got to at least cover our cost here, bud. Yeah. So again, that's the lacrosse way where there wasn't anything that I did or we did in the early stages that was like, wow, it's a genius. It really was just like the community wise where they could have buried me. And they're like, hey, well, you know what? First year we hauled in a lot of wood chips, right? Never got charged for it. I'm like, I don't know what this is going to cost, but I just wanted to make the experience better when it was all muddy and that type of stuff. We're unprepared for it. Gurky excavating. I mean, they brought in like 30 dump trucks and it was just it was like an army, a cavalry kind of came in and stuff, and then a lot of people just drove by, chipped in and said, hey, do you guys need help with this? Do you need help with this? Yeah. I'm like, I can't, like, don't worry about it, man. This is, we want to help you out type of thing. So, I mean, if anybody says like what community is or what lacrosse stands for, it's just very cliche to say, oh, it's community. Man, that they could have soaked me on things. And it just, fencing, for example, Phillips fencing, if you know Ben Phillips and those, put up all this fence and everything else. I mean, they floated it for over a year. Wow. Right. And it was just kind of like, hey man, labor, cool, but just, cover the cost of materials. And all of a sudden we went back on sale for 2019, and we got Kane Brown our second year out of the gate early, so that all of a sudden kind of sparked a whole different set of things, which helped. But again, it's easy to be a spokesperson for it, but literally it's an entire like community that has like pushed this thing forward. It really has been.
Yeah, so, you don't find that in other areas.
Not at all. Not at all.
No. It's definitely the Midwest nice thing.
It's
and we got it on steroids up here.
Oh my gosh, it's unbelievable. There's people. I'm telling you, listen to other horror stories of festivals and stuff. I mean, they just stick you for every single cent. They stick you for so many things. They upcharge on things, and you hear about it all the time. We're here, it's just like, hey, how can we help? How can we be a part of it? Do you need help setting up tearing? It's crazy. So it really is a community event. And, there's really nothing that I'm doing, I feel like that's any special more than just like meeting the right people and having people support this going forward,
So going from that dream of, I want to start, I see something lacking in lacrosse of we should have our own music festival.
Yeah.
Taking that dream, we've talked a little bit about the financial side of it, but the execution, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs and people or I want to start a business, I have this dream, but they don't know those first couple of steps. Obviously with the music festival, holy cow. I was there looking around just like the amount of spinning plates, signs, fences, camping, parking, stage, guests, lights, everything I probably didn't even notice just because it was you don't notice stuff when it's just well done. So like all the spinning plates, how do you go from I've never done this to I'm going to put on this absolutely massive festival?
Right. I tell you what, we were so unprepared. I'll give you a funny story. So like, I got married in 2017. The first event was in 2018 in July. I got married in August of 2017, and then in November of 2017, we went to the county board to just see if we could get approval, right? So I'm sitting there with Dave, and we put our plan in ahead of time, right? Which we've never done this before, right? Like that time, I'm 27 years old, right? Like did some research, did some time and stuff, but we just like, let's see if it's even possible before we really dive into this, right?
Right.
So we go in, we had to fill this like application thing, like before we went in, and it was kind of like, what do we call it? It's just music, I don't know, country, I don't know. And we went through different names, like, I don't know. And his dog name at that time was Boomer.
Really?
Yeah. And he goes, what's this called? It's called Country Boomer. I'm like, let's do Country Boom. And I was like, that's it. All right, that's short for that, So we just wrote on top of it and then submitted it. And they're like, all right, next. Yeah, it was just that. It was that simple. So I swear to God. So you say like, there's certain areas that maybe we were prepared or we did due diligence, but all of a sudden, like, there's certain things where you got to just encourage yourself, like, man, I'll figure it out. Yeah. Let's just go, right? So let's hand it in, and maybe we can start this in 2019. We literally walk into the county board meeting. They go through everything, like, any questions? They go up there and say, well, tell us about yourself. Do you have any experiences? No. Do you have any music background at all? Oh, I played trumpet in high school, right? It was so weird. Yeah. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be terrible, whatever. And all of a sudden they're kind of like, no, we need this in the area. Like, everybody, and we thought it was going to go to like one initial conversation. Next county board meeting would be like a approval process, right? Like, I think we can vote on it right now. It's like, really? I'm like, no, it's not a good idea. Pass unanimously.
Oh my God.
I'm like, I look back at that, I'm like, are you guys nuts? But I grew up in a small town thinking that government is the enemy, right? On every such amazing nation. But they're just like, finding reason to say no, like, why not? Let's do it. This sounds cool, right? Yeah. Like, okay, right? Well, little did I know that there's a court reporter, like from La Crosse Tribune, just like taking notes on either developments or anything else, right? And all of a sudden at that time, this was, like I said, 2017, my phone starts blowing up, right? I just, I'm like, who's the hell's calling me, And then all of a sudden we get out of this meeting and they posted on La Crosse Tribune, like, major music festival coming to La Crosse.
Oh my gosh.
And we didn't have a Facebook page. We didn't have a website. We didn't have a logo, nothing.
Wow.
So we literally then just like, I'm like, holy cow. Like, we had people texting me like, oh my, I didn't tell anybody about it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, at that time, I had like 2,000 shares. It was just going nuts. So I called Derek Peterson, if you guys know him, right? Yep. At that time, he was like an intern, freshman in college. And I'm like, hey, man, do you know any like graphic designers? Like 9 o'clock at night. I'm on like logomaker.com, like trying to make something, right? I go and buy the domain. Thank God Country Boom was still there. Got that, and we're just like figuring this out because people are like, where's this at? And like within an hour, I had a buddy from Milwaukee made this logo today.
Oh my!
We tried to change it, like, hey, go to professional route, and nothing even came close in my opinion. So it was made up in an hour with a college kid out of Milwaukee, and the rest is history. We made a Facebook page, and within an hour, it was like 2,000 likes, just like overnight.
Wow!
And so we're like, oh, we got to do this now because it's just
no going back.
There's no going back now. We had a momentum, and we can't let it sit for a year. So we're like, let's just do this. So that was kind of like that process, that journey of just figuring out as you go in some way and just being lucky in some sense.
Yeah.
And so we weren't ready. We weren't, it was just a matter of bringing the right people involved. I mean, it was like a month out from the event, and we didn't have a bar manager. I'm like, that's not that big a deal. It just serve some drinks, right? And we, someone knew somebody at the Lacrosse Center, run that, Dave Giefer, and suddenly he's our bar manager and says, I know somebody who can help with stage and stuff. And it's just kind of like, it all just kind of came together. And
so was that a lot of it, kind of delegating, finding people who knew what they were doing in specific roles like food and stage?
Yeah, delegation was something I've probably learned the most in this process, where I try to be, involved in everything. It was so overwhelming. Yeah. That just being able to trust people, the right people that, know what they're doing, and then just trusting that they're going to carry to the promised land type of thing. So just being able to try to delegate when I was way overthinking, way over involved in a lot of things, that just having the right team involved is crucial, right? So that's just kind of where it starts to all the plates spinning. You put the right person there. We don't have to balance all of them. Yeah. Is huge, Yeah. So we were just starting to grow that team as we go.
That's awesome. Tell us about how do you get in touch with your talent, the artist?
That's another funny story. Unique. I have a cousin who's in a band. We all have cousins or somebody in a band, right? Yeah. He plays different gigs. So I called him up and I said, hey, we want to start a music festival. And he's like, okay. And do you know anybody? Like, how do we get in touch with them? He's like, well, there's certain like talent brokers out there. And we met with, he gave me a list of different people and kind of met with a few of them. And you just sense from people, like, it's just something seemed off, like it's just very, very like slicked back, like, it just something didn't seem right, So he gave me the top of the list was somebody down in like Chicago. He goes, he has some clubs down there, and he seems pretty involved in the industry. So we just cold called him for like 6 months. This was before we went to get approved. We just called him for like 6 months, got his phone number, right, and just click from a gatekeeper, right? Found a cell phone number from somebody, call him up, hello. And it's like, oh, 6 months of, you've been there, right?
Oh,
6
yeah.
months of being no answer. And all of a sudden you're like, all right, I'm just going to do my due diligence and just show them interest. And all of a sudden it's like, hello. It's like, I'm like, all right, so situation, right? From a small town. Yeah. So I had the conversation. He's like, yeah, okay, let's talk. He's like, well, I want to meet you guys. And it's like, okay. So me just not knowing what to expect. I mean, a really great resume, of like, talent buyer of the year, promoter of the year. I mean, a lot of these different awards. So I'm thinking, I'm going to go get the nicest suit that I have or go get one, dress it all up, go down to Chicago, not knowing what to expect, right? We had a few guys with us, made a road trip down, walk in. He's got and again, you got to understand the people we met prior to this, right? Yeah. Dressed to the nines. And, I thought this guy would be like 12 feet tall and, worth 4 Rolexes or something. And he literally was wearing Chuck Taylor shoes, and like a zip up hoodie like Mark Zuckerberg would wear. And he's like, hey, what's up, guys? You guys want a beer? Like, it's just like, and he's like, looking at me like, hey, nice soup, bud. I was like,
really?
Oh, gosh, And so it was just super cool, man. It was not what I expected. And that's probably why he's the best, because he wasn't trying to, he almost tried to talk us out of it, man. He's like, this is a tough industry. Like, I don't want anybody to get hurt, And it was kind of like, I like that he's even like looking out for us instead of just like hitting the gas of like, go bigger, go bigger, go bigger. He's kind of like, hey, just, bring it back. Fast forward through this whole process of getting in touch with artist camps, stuff like that. For 5 years then, like right after we had, gotten, touch with him.
Yeah.
He literally became, was voted on as like the chairman of the Academy of Country Music. Wow. So it's like.
So no big deal.
So I was like, whoa, what? And at that, and it was just nuts at that point where it's just like, you're just like honored to even be able to talk to him, where it's like, we're having weekly conversations, every other day conversations of just, he helped us out with that too. It's like, here's the point of sale that we use. Here's the things that we use. Make sure you double check this. And it was just more of a mentorship that way. Knew that we lost bad in 2018. He goes, you don't owe me any fee this year. Just get back up on the horse in 2019 and go after it, right? And he goes, if you guys get your feet under it, then you come back, right? And he kicked me in the teeth a few times when I needed it, right? Where it's just tough love. Yeah. And I'm like, this guy's an asshole, It's like, but then it's kind of at the time what I needed, right? Like, don't make excuses. You should have been prepared for the weather, not like, hey, it's your first year. You could, you couldn't have expected 7-8 inches of rain, where people are very like, hey, it's not your fault. He's like, should have been prepared, man. You should. I'm like, he's like, next year. Now we're like hypersensitive on rain, right? So it's just one of those things. So that's another weird story where it's just kind of like, it was just made the right phone call at the right time and just able to sense who's the right person for that. And it just maybe a little bit of luck, right? So
we'll crush that, because I feel like every single year it's like you get the person right when they're having the #1 hit or album, and it's like, geez.
We have probably 6 or 7 people that I know that are like our age, my age. I mean, this guy's probably in his 50s or whatever, that I just always call. They always answer, they always call, and they're always like excited, right? Yeah. They're always just, think about this person. I really like this person. You start seeing commonalities where someone's like, hey, they mentioned this. Hey, they mentioned this. Completely unheard of. Like Megan Maroney, we got her this year on Friday. She had a #1 song, Tennessee Orange, Yeah. Got her 8 months prior to the event. Wow. Completely unheard of. And it's like, oh, she's got some potential. She sounds great, But again, that's finding lightning in a bottle. That's at that point, where it just takes off. But it happens a lot now where it's just kind of like, we got the right people that we just call and communicate with. So
yeah, because you've had more than one lightning strike, right? Lightning doesn't strike twice. Well, it's struck like 3 times. So you're telling me it's not like, hey, I'm going to hire this person because I know 2 weeks before Country Boom, she's going to have a #1.
No,
it's not that easy.
We're like booked out for next year already, and I just haven't released it yet because I know like a lot of people aren't going to know some of the names, but by fall or late in the year, they have an album due. No, that's not great sense. But it's exciting that way, right? It's like you're voting. It's like you almost feel like you're your kid, because it's like, great song, and all of a sudden, that a video goes viral for him. It's like, yes. It's like
you're cheering behind.
I'm cheering him, man. I'm like, here we go, come on, So I don't know. It's always been fun that way too. It's a little bit different spin. So
what's it like meeting famous music artists?
At first it was very kind of like intimidating and thought I had to be somebody I wasn't stuff. I mean, most of these people are just like literally normal people, right? Once in a while you get somebody that have some kind of tendency, where they kind of like, you feel like it's prima donna, but at the same time is, you understand, these people are literally on the road 360 days out of the year. Every single day, it's a different venue. They're always living out of a suitcase. They're always having to deal with certain foods. You know, sometimes you just want to get home and you want to cook your own meal and sleep in your own bed. So sometimes it's kind of like, you know, these guys are people too. Yeah. So it's like, if they really want something on their rider, it's like, oh, that seems very childish. And it's like, man, they're coming. They're gonna put on a show that people are gonna enjoy and get them captivated and emotional, and they're putting their heart and soul out there. Yeah, I'm gonna get them the burger. I'm gonna get them the whatever. We're gonna get what they want, because that's what makes them feel at home, right? So that's the thing you have to realize, is that they're playing late at night, right? They're traveling throughout the night, sleeping in an RV that's bouncing on the road. Do what the best that you can to make their life easier, because it's not, you know, it's glamorous for the 2 hours they're on the stage, but then they're right back on to the next show, right? Sure. And so it's just, that's one of the things that is realizing they're people, and a lot of times they like the simple stuff that we do. You know, they say like, hey, don't bring like barbecue pork sandwiches, don't bring some heavy stuff. You know, sometimes they're just like, I just want like a turkey sandwich.
Really?
Yeah, because they're like, every time, you know, every stop, people always trying to show off their like smoking prowess. You know, they have these heavy meals constantly. Like, man, I just want like a Caesar salad. Yeah. You know, something light, man, or something whatever else. And it's like, all right, cool, man, let's do it. You know, so
I was on our flight, our layover back from our honeymoon. We stopped in L.A. and walk into the hotel, and like, everybody's dressed up, cowboy hats and cowboy boots and everything. Oh, what's going on? Turns out Morgan Wallen is playing in like an hour across from our hotel. Didn't end up going, but went to bed, woke up the next morning to leave and fly out, and there's 3 tour buses right in the parking lot of the hotel. It was Morgan Wallen and Hardy, so I think they were just sleeping in the bus right in the parking lot of the hotel that we were at. But
sometimes that's simple.
We're staying in a nice hotel room, and I'm sure their bus is nice, but sleeping in parking lots and then off to the next, probably.
Yeah. So I mean, in that sense, I mean, you got to respect the hustle, respect the grind. There's nothing more competitive than going to the bar scene at, you know, Nashville, kind of cutting your teeth and find, you know, years and years and years of just playing to nobody, playing for tips. It finally hits, and then it's like, hey, you think you made it? Actually,
I mean, that's the reward.
Like, you got to sleep with 7 other people on a crowded tour bus, and that's gonna say, oh, they haven't made. It's like, that's got to wear on you, you know.
Absolutely.
So try to accommodate the best you can, and on my side, don't be a Karen. Right. If they want a bottle of whatever, get it for them. Right. Like.
There you go.
Get it for them.
That's gonna be the name of the episode. Don't be a Karen.
That's funny.
Who are some of your favorite artists that you've been able to meet and talk with? Any cool stories or?
Yeah, Phil Vassar, our first year was really cool, because at that point, as our first year, there was mud. You know, like, it was first year. We can get into an hour conversation just on that, but pulls up backstage, and we had this field covered that they needed to cover the grass area where they were going to park at that point. You know, and at that point, there's people with tour buses and stuff, and it's supposed to be like, can survive any weather. Well, then after 8 inches of rain, literally in a day, you pull back there, and the whole thing was just a swamp. They pull in this field cover, and the stuff just cracks, breaks underneath the weight, and just gets stuck, you know.
The tour bus,
right, at like 6:30 in the morning. And so the funny thing is that all of a sudden, like, the driver of that is like getting worked up because it's an expensive bus. We're trying to hook it to whatever. Like, don't look at this, is an expensive vehicle. And, you know, everybody's just stressing out and freaking out. And there's an army of people like bringing in a tractor and this and that. I remember like Phil Vassar at that time, he just, you know, again, he's been around for 25, 30 years. It's just another stop for him. He like rolls out. I mean, he had like sunglasses on and a robe and the coffee. He's like, what's going on? You know, we're like, oh, sorry about your bus. He's like, you know, these people's like, don't worry, I got this handled, you know. And he's like just chewing our butts and this and that. And he goes, hey man, get your ass back in the bus. He's like, you guys will take care of this, right? We're like, yeah, man. He's like, all right, let me know if you need something. We'll stay out of your hair. I was like,
I'm picturing it right now in my brain as Cousin Eddie saying, poopers.
Yeah, shit is full. I mean, he didn't care. He's like, hey, you guys got it taken care of. We'll stay off your back. And it's like, oh my God. He was just so accommodating and just like we all wanted to rally behind him because it was like the guy you thought would be the prima donna was the voice of reason, you know? And he's like, it's my tour bus. I paid for it.
Yeah.
Get back on the bus. These guys are good. It's like, holy cow. All right. So that was just really cool. Like it was just
super cool.
Yeah. So stuff like that is just the unexpected. You think it's just performance and you think who did the best performance. It was just more so, it was not what we expected at all in that sense. And it was just great to work with.
So what was that your craziest moment, or what would be your craziest moment that's happened so far? Something cool or crazy? I know the first year, obviously the rain was probably, it's got to be up at the towards the top.
Yeah, I mean, during the rain, there's so many things that happened that first day. So Randy Hauser was our headliner that Friday, their first year out of the gate. His bus broke down in Chicago, right? And it's like, oh gosh, like is he not going to play? It was all over social media that he was stuck, ended up finding a limo that came, right? They picked him up, they drove him up, says, he's on his way. The rain had happened, there was mud everywhere. We tried to bring in wood chips. Well, someone told us about a pile of wood chips. It was ground up pallets and had nails in it, right? So people are like, I'm stepping in nails, and it's just like, oh my gosh, tour buses getting stuck in the back, and what was it? The air conditioning unit inside the building, this temporary AC unit, that somewhere down the surge got struck by lightning, lightning struck whatever electrical it was, created a surge, and then all of a sudden it blew up the motor, and so the whole building was full of smoke. So people coming out of there, like, I was like, the building's on fire, and I'm like,
oh my,
no, we're losing money, knowing this and that, and all of a sudden, like, all these things are going on around me. There was no parking. We had to shuttle everybody in, so getting that communicated out there, then all of a sudden the building is, thought was on fire, just smoke everywhere. It was like a horror movie. People walking up, my eyes are burning, coughing, and I'm like, it was just chaos everywhere, right? And then like a couple hours passed, and all of a sudden the rain stops, right? And then all of a sudden things like, hey, we got it handled, right? Electrician comes, pulls the plug, it's handled, right? We got the, it's handled, and all of a sudden, Randy Hauser's pulling in with the limo, and all of a sudden like things started coming together, and it was like, it was spiritual to me because I was up front, and all of a sudden people were like, oh my gosh, look. We look back, like behind the building, it was like a perfect like double rainbow. Cool. Like when all of a sudden the storm had passed, and then it was just like, all right, you survived it. And then that night, like Randy Hauser like put on an amazing show. People were like awesome. Knee deep in mud, and they still say that was the best year because everything was chaos. People were running and gunning and so many things, and all of a sudden like everybody helped out, solved the problems, and all of a sudden like it was like clear the rest of the night, perfect rainbow, and it was just like. We haven't had that kind of like rain or any issues like that since, and it was all just within the first 4 hours of being open.
Wow,
so
cool.
It was like, holy cow! That's like if you can weather the storm and not give up, like there's good things that happen. I've felt that, sensed that. That's why we just keep pushing forward because I'm like, it's tested, right? So just stick with it.
Yep.
That was the coolest moment, the rainbow at the end of the first year.
That is super cool.
Oh, double rainbow
across the sky.
Sorry.
That's funny.
I think, any business owner, entrepreneur has faced adversity, whether it's a muddy concert or nails in the wood chips or whatever it is. But I think having that kind of Phil Vassar demeanor of we're going to figure it out, we're going to make it happen, we're going to find a way, like freaking out and trying to control everything that can't be controlled, that's not the solution.
No.
So I think that speaks to your demeanor of cool, calm, and collected. It'll make it happen. We'll figure it out. Well, maybe you didn't feel like that.
I was not cool, calm, collected.
Maybe you didn't feel like that in the moment.
It's just everybody else was cool, calm, collected. I'm just like,
for sure. But you find a way to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
As business owners, entrepreneurs, we're problem solvers. We're firefighters, problem solvers, and when adversity comes knocking at your door, you find a way to figure it out.
For sure, amen. I credited a lot where probably one of the personal drivers on top of like me and my wife meeting was I'm literally just so sick and tired of hearing like how millennials don't want to work, right? And have all these young people have so many like negative connotations on. I take that so personally. I don't know why people are like, you just let it go. It's like no, I'm not gonna let it go. I'm just sick and tired of hearing it, and almost every area. I mean, there's a few, but a lot of the like superstars on our team are all young people, right? Like that people wrote off, or they came from some other event or some other thing where they were just like not appreciated at all, and they're absolute rock stars, So I look at that as far as like young people, where it's like, to tell the story of kind of where we started and stuff, because so many people are just like, oh, young people don't know how to work, and these baby boomers, they're exaggerating like crazy of like all the work that they did and all these other type of stuff. Oh, what I went through this. And it's like, every young person I've met is an absolute workhorse, right? Like they do like work their tails off, Oh, they don't, talk, like they speak their mind, right? And people like chastise them for it, which I hate. And it's like, they're a very driven individual. They're very, forward thinking. They're very entrepreneurial. And I think more so than anything, like so many young people are so entrepreneurial, right? And they want to start their own thing where it kind of uproots the, I don't want to call it establishment, but established businesses like, well, nobody wants to work. I'm like, no, they just don't want to work for you.
Yeah.
Right? They want to do their own thing. Right? And it's like, well, nobody wants to work. I said, have you tried saying I'm going to pay somebody $100,000 to mom, whatever it is?
Yeah.
Well, no. It's like, well, you don't want people to work for cheap, right? So it's kind of like that great balancing where it's like there's so much opportunity now. Podcasts, no one's really watching TV as much. They're not listening to radio as much. They're not reading the newspaper. They're watching podcasts, right? They're doing different. They're going to events. They're spreading word of mouth and social media and stuff. And these young people are able to start these very successful businesses, and take on those risks versus just taking the safe guarantee, as say a salary sometimes, where they're pushing that envelope. So it's not that there's no skilled workers out there anymore. It's just that they're out in the market as their own business, right? And I find that very inspiring, where a lot of young people are going that direction. And to be honest with you, most of the problems that I've seen are just the opposite. Where it's a lot of the older ones where they're expecting things and they're it's very different. So I think a lot of young people is, if you're in the La Crosse area or in a area, like, you do have a great work ethic, right? And you do have that vision, like trust yourself a little bit, that even though you're getting dogged on as a generational thing, I think it's an unbelievable skill set that our generation has. And it's just starting to come to fruition now where we're getting to the age where it's like, holy cow, these guys are a force to be reckoned with, and that's our team. We have a lot of stars. Maybe I'm just a spokesperson for it, but they do a lot of things that are just way above and beyond the Call of Duty. So,
well, I really like that. And I would say I probably am not leaning towards thinking the way you did, but yeah, I think about it, and yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it's that generation just isn't settling.
Right.
No, like you said, I don't want to work for you because I don't want to settle for less because I have either big dreams or big aspirations,
right,
or that entrepreneurial spirit where it's like, no, I don't want to not work.
Right.
I'm done settling.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure.
People don't like that.
No, I think it's a bad mindset to have when you're looking for a spouse, because then you got a bunch of 35 and 40-year-olds who are single and like, I can't find anybody. It's like, well, because you want the perfect, whatever. I'm not going to get into that. Yeah. But the point is in the business world is there's a lot more that take that risk on. And it'll settle itself out. Either you are who you think that you are, and you're going to push to be that, or if it doesn't work out, then you go and take more of a safe route where you want to be home and done by 4:30, 5 o'clock, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Yep. But we're talking about the cream of the crop, I would say, where they're no longer just kind of getting plugged into a corporate system where they're like, hey, I'm going to start my own real estate business. I'm going to start my own this. I'm going to start my own that. A lot of electricians, a lot of plumbers, a lot of things are kind of doing their own thing, which I think is inspiring as all heck, man. I think that's great. It kind of balances the market, and I think people should not be ashamed of that, right? So,
and I think good leadership. It comes down to good leadership for the bigger companies that are looking for employees. When we have Dave Toyd on, he's like, we don't have a hiring problem. He said, we have people knocking at our door to come work for our company.
Exactly.
They have good leadership in their company, and people want to work for that company.
They're inspired.
For sure.
Talk to Dave Swipe for real. I mean, you're inspired. You want to be a part of that.
Yep.
It's a culture issue.
It is.
Yep.
Exactly.
Not a work
thing. No.
Yep.
Are they inspired or are they not inspired? Do they feel like they're a part of the bigger goal? Are they pressing limits, or is it just every single day is a mundane?
Yep.
Like I've talked about Ben Phillips again. Yep. He's like, you guys are hard on your bodies out there working every day. It makes a requirement that every single person every day has to work out. He built the gym inside there and says, I'm going to pay you on the clock for an hour of working out every day to work on your bodies and helps your mental state. It's like, wow. Yeah. Really? Yeah. It's like, it's unbelievable, right?
Austin doesn't even have a gym.
Obviously. No,
for us. So.
No. But again, it's a different, you make a good point on that. It's not just so much on the independent side, but it's that helping you become a much better person overall, instead of just come work for me, don't say much, punch out when you're told, and, oh, by the way, you have to pay for your water, right? It's like, it's one of those weird things where that world is changing for that, and it's just inspiring people, right?
Yeah. So maybe a call out to bosses and leaders. Look, if you're having trouble finding people, maybe it's not always blame everybody else. Hey, it's that generation. It's people don't want to work. Maybe turn the mirror around and say, maybe my culture isn't conducive.
Right.
Yeah.
People don't want to follow.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you're a leader, people just don't want to follow you.
All right. But I mean, the tied in the country room thing too is, how many times do people that come out of college, right, and they grew up in a certain area, right, and there's everything that they ever wanted, but all of a sudden they might leave, even though they may make more money where they're currently at, but they're saying, hey, I'm going to move to Minneapolis, I'm going to move to Milwaukee, I'm going to move somewhere else, because I might be making less money in a higher cost of living area because there's cool things to do.
Yeah.
Right? We get, generationally get crap for coffee shops and avocado toast and all these things, right? But they're like, you know what? I'm willing to live in an apartment versus a house or whatever for this time of my life because I want to go and experience things, right? I want to be entertained. I want to go have some other things, right?
Yep.
So instead of like saying, oh, that's a stupid value system, they say, like, well, why don't we just do that here, right? And we can compete on the things that you value, Because all of a sudden you say, well, it's got all the things I want. It's got cool events, it's got cool concerts, it's got a baseball game or a basketball game that I want to kind of catch, and there's cool stuff to do, and I can make more money here versus I got to take it in the shorts a little bit and go make less and kind of earn my stripes. It's like, well, why don't we bring some of those cultural things and have great business?
Yep.
Right? Like that's where I think lacrosse really has something special is that we do really in the last 5 to 10 years have really started to take that shift of dining experience and just overall experiences and those type of things where there's always something going on now. So it's a cool recruiting tool where it's tough to wrap your mind around of what people value.
Yep.
Right? So instead of say you shouldn't value that is try to find a way of harnessing that passion,
Absolutely.
Yeah, you've made it when you finally got a Chick-fil-A.
That's very true. I love that.
So maybe let's end on this.
Yeah.
Country Boom, you're 5 years in, right?
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years? What's your dream? Where do you see it going?
I see it breaking off, not just on the Country Boom side of things, but I think that, there's an old saying, I saw it on like Joe Rogan or something that, it's like a samurai quote or something like that. Like once you see the way, you can see it in all things, right? So it's like one of those things of like that value proposition where we can start applying it in certain things that might be underserved, right? Whether it's country music, whether it's rock or EDM or anything else like that, right? But it's also kind of builds into, is this kind of an experience-based things for corporate events, right? Like they're starting to get more and more into like employee or customer, appreciation type of events and stuff like that, So kind of building that into more of a year-round kind of entertainment or marketing side of things because, like I said before, podcast, it's getting a lot of views, millions of views of, just organic good content. Are people listening to ads on TV as much anymore? I know I cut cable, right?
Yeah.
Like I just don't even have it anymore. Same with radio. Like, are you listening to traditional radio or is it Spotify, Pandora, Apple Music, Sirius XM, right? So there's always kind of this void of people, of businesses who want to get their name out for either hiring or for their product or service. The traditional methods are not really working anymore, right? So it's kind of like turning into more of a marketing business, as in its sense as well. Is just, hey, we're marketing the artist, but you've seen any of our social stuff, we're pushing our partnerships just as much, is because we have a engaged audience for this entertainment.
Yep.
Sports teams doing the same thing. You see these sports team valuations going crazy is because of how can we get people to tune in at one specific time? If I miss an episode of Yellowstone, I can go online and see it, right? Yep. But for the sports games and some of these other live events, that time window is extremely important. So I kind of see it more of a branching off of more things surrounded around that entertainment space and making sure that the marketing is getting done, more community things that we can do now that we're kind of starting to get over some of the early startup woes, if you will, of just getting more involved in the community, on youth groups. I have a passion for youth, for the young, I don't know why, but they're just kids, It's like adults I always feel like adults will be able to find a way, and there's a lot of resources pumped into that, but it's like, man, kids are kids, like there's a lot of kids with some rough go, I want to try to use this as a platform for finding some small business, new entrepreneurial young kid of saying, hey, I have this really cool widget and stuff, like, I don't want anything. I think it's a really cool product and I like what you're saying for. I'll help you promote it, right? We have a big following, make it a cool thing, and all of a sudden it's like, pay it forward in that sense, where we can use the platform for more than just us sort of trying to survive, that we can build it into other things. You know, we have resources the other day in West Salem that had the hailstorm and stuff. You know, like we had 30 generators laying around that we just got done packing up.
Spencer told me about that.
Well, it's just Spencer, you know, but, you know, your brother was involved in that actually, where it's just like, people like, we're out of power. We have, you know, there's holes in people's roofs and stuff. And I'm like, we got tarps for rain. We got a lot of generators, right? We have all this stuff that we packed away. And it's like,
Yeah.
it doesn't cost me anything but time to just go and see if anybody needs anything, right? So we didn't know when power was going to come back on. So it's funny, I show up to Spencer's at 1 o'clock, plug everything in. He's like, all right, we're good to go. And then all of a sudden he's like, well, power's back on at 4:30. It's like, oh my gosh, you know? So it's like, you know, but Spencer is somebody, I'll give you one quick story on that. Spencer is somebody that literally changed the direction of not only Country Boom, but everybody, because it was just me finding the right people, right? 2020 comes around. We haven't really talked about COVID. Right. But when that came around, you know, he was very vocal online. I don't think I've ever met Spencer before that. Is Adam
Really?
On social media. Yeah, it was 20. I mean, I met him once or twice, but it wasn't anything like as significant, you know. And so 2020, I just kind of watched, but he was very vocal, and some of the stuff was getting reshared. I mean, it wasn't anything where he was holding anything back.
Nope.
You know, he was really calling out things and like, wow, like he's really pushing it, you know, on a lot of different things, right? And as a realtor and somebody who's community minded, it's like, oh, I'm going to try to just keep the peace. And he's like, no, this is complete nonsense, right? He's just be pushing it. You're going to sink businesses, and you're going to sink businesses, and you're going to do it. I mean, it's just every single day it was just like encouraging. He's like, yes, like all the things I'd want to say, you know, as a new startup and just getting our foot established. We go 2 years in, 18, 19, 20 year shutdown. People say we took a year off. I'm like, it was almost 2 years, because at 2019's event, the next one we had was in 2021. So you're 2 years in, and then it's 2 years since someone saw Country Boom again. I mean, it just was an absolute killer for momentum, you know, and that type of thing. So going into 2021, then there's still events shutting down like crazy, right? And I'm like, this is a survival thing. We got crushed in 2020. We had a lot of expenses out there for marketing and things that we invested in, and suddenly that's gone again. It's like, cannot catch a break, right? Like, I'm just like, there's no hope here. And the funny thing is even at that time, going into 2021, there were some businesses, you know, big business, that were just kind of like, well, what's your sponsorship packet look like? What are the impressions I'm going to get? Well, we need a few more tickets if we're going to, it's just like, it was very like businessy. And I'm sitting there like, okay, whatever. Like they knew they had me on the ropes, and it was just kind of like frustrating, right? Or it's just kind of like, oh my God, I need to do this and that. I kid you not. I'm going to keep numbers out of it, but I kid you not. Like, I got a phone call from an unknown number. It was like a week and a half out from the event in 2021, right? Spencer's on the line, right? Again, he's out there, he's brash and this and that, you know. He's like, hey, Spencer, whatever. And again, we're a week and a half out from the event. And he's like, hey, I don't know if you have any sponsor packets or whatever. I don't really give a shit, right? He's just like, whatever. He's like, I'll give you X. He goes, I don't know what that gets me, but I think it's really cool that you're doing this and, you know, doing the event again. And I know you've been through some rough patches with this. And at that point, real estate was doing great.
Yeah.
You know, it was 5 figures, multiple 5 figures, where I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like, no way. He's like, no, man, real estate's been great. You know, everything's been going great. You know, I'm very blessed in this. But he's like, I can't imagine the time you're having. He goes, I don't know what this gets me. I don't need to see a packet, but just whatever it gets me, it gets me.
That's awesome.
And I'm like, oh, I said, did you enjoy it? Like 21, he goes, I've never been to Country Boom. I'm like, what? You know, I'm like, is this like through your company corporate thing? He goes, no, just me. Like, you know, to go through that process to get it approved, it's just going to take a while. He's like, I know we're short. I'm like, we're a week and a half out, man. He's like, I know, I don't care. So I'm like, I just like sat back. And again, I'm getting beat up from every big company that's had record years about this and that and this and that. And it was like, put the money where his mouth is. He knew that we needed that. So when he showed up, you know, we put him on the main stage.
Yeah.
Not because he had paid the amount to be there, but it's just because of that mindset where he's like, I don't care what it gets me. I don't care if we can get any tickets. I'll buy my own tickets. I don't care.
Yeah.
He's like, I just think it's really cool that you're doing this. And all of a sudden, like, you show up, I'm like, dude, I put you on the main stage. He's like,
That's
what?
awesome.
You know? And he's like, why? And I said, as long as you're involved from here and forward, you always have a spot. Not because you paid the same amount as everybody else, but it's because of like that literally just, you know, as brash as he might have been on social media about pushing whatever, he backed it up. At that time, he could have put down payments and other real estate and really try to expand it, but he's like, I'm going to do this. You know,
That's cool.
Didn't meet him, never been to Country Boom. And so putting on the main stage was just something I really like to just like give back and show how much I appreciate it. And since then, going forward, I don't have any sponsorship packets. I threw them away. I'm like, if they don't have that mindset, as soon as they ask for it, I say, nope.
That's great.
Because at that point, it was like, if they're always going to hustle me for, well, we didn't get enough impressions, we didn't get this. And it's been an absolute game changer because we have the right people involved.
Yeah.
Right? And if they'd expect nothing, then I want to try to give them everything. Right? Versus like that, that constant pressing. It's just different, man.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's just something I can't explain. He's got kids. He's got college funds he wants to try to do, and it was just like I didn't know him from Adam at that point. And it was just like, holy cow,
Yeah. Cool story.
Yeah.
Cool
that's
story.
amazing.
Spencer will be on Thursday on the podcast.
Is he? So he'll be fun and he'll be, whatever. But man, he's got a heart of gold, and it's just one of those things that set us on a different trajectory of like who we're looking for to be a part of, and it's been great ever since. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, we appreciate you being here. This was awesome. I don't know if you ever told the story of the first time I've ever heard it of where Country Boom came from and all that goes into it, and it's inspiring.
There's never really a platform to really do that
Yeah.
without trying to package it into a 10-second
For sure.
conversation. So I appreciate what you guys are doing and bringing some of this to life. But you guys are both young guys, millennial types,
I think I'm the next one.
He's
a
older.
millennial.
I'm a
older.
millennial.
Oh, yeah? Well, millennials are Gen X, right? Or Gen Z?
Yeah, he's
I don't
worse.
know.
He's the
I think I'm 1 year
Gen Z.
off. Z.
How old are you?
26.
26?
Yeah.
Yeah, you kids just don't know. You don't know how to work. You haven't been through us.
There you go.
Cool. I love
Well,
what
thanks
you guys
for
are doing.
being here. We appreciate it. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you guys. Yeah, thank you.
Everybody check out
Absolutely.
Country Boom.
Yep.
That's the place to
Yeah,
be next summer.
Where can people go to find out more about you or Country Boom? Or
Countryboom.com or our social media pages. Just type in Country Boom and
Cool.
hopefully it should pop up if we've done our digital marketing strategy correctly.
Sounds great.
All right, boom.
Thank you guys.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. We sincerely hope that you learned something today. And as always, we appreciate your support and hope that you can all find a way this week to pay it forward.